Arden Vale sat alone in the quiet outpost, the cold seeping through his coat and into his bones. The stars outside were strange tonight, flickering like broken signals through the darkness. He had lived through wars, seen planets burn, and survived battles that most would never imagine. Yet now, in the emptiness of this remote corner of the galaxy, the silence felt heavier than any enemy he had faced. His hands rested on the table, shaking slightly, not from age, but from the memory of things he could not forget. The wind howled outside, carrying with it a strange metallic scent. Arden's eyes scanned the horizon, even though he knew nothing was coming. The outpost had been abandoned for years, yet he stayed. Old habits die slowly, and some responsibilities, even imagined ones, cling harder than fear. He sipped a cup of bitter, recycled water and listened to the quiet hum of the old sensors. They had been warning him of movement for hours, but he had grown used to false alarms. Or perhaps, he told himself, the galaxy was playing tricks on him, reminding him that even here, no one was truly alone. Arden reached for his rifle, not because he expected a fight, but because holding it reminded him he was still alive. Every scar on his hands told a story of battles won and friends lost. The war that had ended years ago was still alive in his mind. Faces of comrades he could not save appeared in shadows. Every night was a reminder that survival was lonely, and survival was not always enough. He rubbed his eyes and let out a long, quiet sigh, thinking the night would pass like every other. Suddenly, the door creaked. Arden's head snapped up. He had checked it hours ago. No one should be here. His pulse quickened. "Show yourself," he said, his voice low but steady. The shadows in the room shifted as the wind rattled the metal walls. Arden stood, gripping his rifle tighter, scanning the entrance. Another creak, this time closer. His mind raced. Raiders? Scavengers? Or something worse? He had seen creatures and enemies that would make most civilians scream, and yet here, alone, he faced only the unknown. The door opened slowly, and 4 small figures stepped inside. They moved cautiously, their steps soft against the metal floor. Arden lowered his rifle slightly, unsure what he was seeing. They were small, cloaked in dark fabrics that shimmered faintly, as if catching the little light in the room. Their voices were soft, nervous, and careful. "Sir, we are sorry we're late," one said, barely above a whisper. Arden frowned. "Who are you?" he asked, his voice gruff. The figures paused. One stepped forward and lifted a hood, revealing wide, glowing eyes and small, delicate features. Arden blinked. This was no human child. 4 tiny dragons stood before him, each one no bigger than a human toddler. Their scales glimmered faintly in the dim light, and small wisps of smoke curled from their nostrils. Arden's mind froze. Dragons were supposed to be legends, myths spoken of in stories for children, or nightmares for soldiers. And yet here they were, trembling slightly but staring at him with a strange mix of fear and hope. The smallest of them, a girl with amber scales, looked at him and said, "Mama said you would keep us safe for one night." Arden swallowed hard. His life had prepared him for violence, for loss, for betrayal, but not this. Not creatures that breathed fire but trusted him completely. He lowered his rifle all the way, kneeling slightly to meet their gaze. "Who sent you?" he asked quietly, as if asking louder might break the fragile moment. The smallest dragon shook her head. "Mama is hurt. She said you understand." Arden's mind raced. He did not understand everything, but he understood responsibility. He understood courage. And he understood what it meant to protect those who could not protect themselves. Outside, the wind picked up, howling against the outpost walls. The sensors blinked erratically, picking up shapes moving in the dark. Arden could feel the tension in the room grow. The dragons shivered slightly, huddling together. One, a slightly older boy with greenish scales, tilted his head and whispered, "They might be coming." Arden nodded, more to himself than to the children. He did not need them to tell him. He had survived ambushes in asteroid fields, attacks on distant colonies, and betrayals from people he had once called friends. He could face whatever came through that door. He moved to the entrance and checked the locks, securing the doors tightly. The dragons watched, fascinated by his careful movements. Arden could feel the old excitement returning, the same focus he had felt in battle, the clarity that came with danger. Protecting these small creatures, he realized, was like protecting his own life. The stakes felt high, the night full of unknown threats, but Arden welcomed it. For the first time in years, he did not feel entirely alone. The 4 dragons settled near the warmth of a small heater. Arden watched them carefully, noting how each one had a unique glow, a personality in their cautious movements. He did not know what awaited them outside, but inside, they had a brief sanctuary. Arden took a deep breath, feeling the tension slowly ease, even as the night pressed on. The memories of war were still there, sharp and relentless, but now there was something else: responsibility, hope, and the faintest warmth of family that he had never known. Hours passed. The stars shifted in the sky. The wind continued to lash against the outpost walls. Arden sat near the dragons, speaking softly, telling them stories he had never told anyone, about battles, comrades, mistakes, and courage. They listened, eyes wide, occasionally whispering questions he could not answer. The night stretched long, full of shadows and memories, but Arden did not feel the cold as sharply. Then, a faint sound from outside caught his attention, a hum, mechanical, precise. Arden stiffened, alert. The dragons perked up, sensing his focus. He looked at them, and for a moment, their trust in him became a bridge to courage he thought he had lost. "Stay close," he said, voice steady. Whatever came through the doors would find a human who had seen death many times before. And 4 small dragons who believed he could protect them, even for a single night. As the darkness deepened, Arden realized something he had not admitted before. This night, this unexpected company, had given him purpose again. He did not know who would come, or why, or what dangers waited. But he knew one thing clearly. He would not fail them. Not tonight. Not ever. And as the outpost held firm against the cold and the silence, Arden Vale and the 4 small dragons waited together, ready for whatever the galaxy might send. Arden Vale watched the 4 small dragons as they moved quietly around the outpost. Their scales glimmered faintly in the dim light, like tiny stars caught in the shadows. Each one was different. The smallest, amber-colored girl, had bright, curious eyes and delicate wings that fluttered slightly whenever she moved. The boy with greenish scales seemed more cautious, staying close to the others, his eyes constantly scanning the room. The 2 older ones, a blue-scaled boy and a silver-scaled girl, carried a quiet strength, though their tails twitched nervously. Arden could not remember a moment in his long life when he had felt something so fragile and important in his hands. He knelt to their level, trying to offer a sense of calm. "What's your names?" he asked quietly. The amber girl spoke first. "I am Rinal," she said, her voice soft but firm. The greenish boy followed, "I am Sova." The older children said their names in turn. "Kesh," said the blue-scaled boy, and Elira, the silver one whispered. Arden nodded, repeating the names softly to himself, trying to remember them all. It mattered. Names meant something. Names made trust real. The dragons were quiet, but not afraid. They were curious, their eyes watching Arden carefully. The youngest, Rinal, stepped forward and touched his hand with her tiny claw. A spark of warmth ran through him, faint but real. The small gesture was simple, yet it made him feel as if they were already his responsibility. "I promised your mother," Arden said softly, "I will keep you safe." The children looked at each other, then nodded in understanding. Trust had been given, and he felt its weight immediately. Outside, the wind lashed against the walls again, rattling the sensors and doors. Arden glanced at the blinking lights, knowing it was only a matter of time before someone noticed. The children stiffened at the sound. Sova pressed close to Arden, his small body trembling slightly. "They are coming," he whispered. Arden sighed, already aware that danger was not far. "Then we wait," he said calmly. "And we prepare." He led them to a small storage room, one he had reinforced years ago in case of attacks. It was cramped, but safe. The children huddled together inside, wings folding tightly around their bodies. Arden checked the locks and bolted the door with practiced hands. He turned to them. "We may need to be quiet. We may need to move fast. Do you understand?" Each of them nodded solemnly. He could see that courage, even in these small creatures, was present. It was quiet, but it burned like fire. The dragons began to speak softly among themselves, sharing small details of their journey. They had been traveling through asteroid fields, dodging patrols, hiding from hunters who wanted to capture them. Arden listened, learning their story piece by piece. Their mother, the Dragon Queen Velthra, had been injured in a battle and could not travel with them. She had entrusted them to Arden because, long ago, he had chosen mercy over violence in a war that nearly destroyed both species. Arden remembered nothing of the event, but the dragons remembered everything. Their faith in him was complete. As the hours passed, Arden noticed more about the children. Kesh was the quiet thinker, always scanning for dangers in the shadows. Elira was the most daring, her silver scales glinting as she examined every corner of the room. Rinal and Sova stuck close together, their warmth and innocence grounding the group. Arden realized he was learning about them as much as they were learning about him. Small gestures, careful glances, the way they breathed softly in unison, it all felt like a small miracle in the emptiness of the galaxy. The first sign of trouble came quietly. A low hum, mechanical and precise, echoed through the outpost. Arden stiffened, motioning for the children to stay down. Sova and Rinal pressed close, while Kesh and Illyra's eyes sharpened, reading the movements outside. Arden moved to the entrance, listening to the faint clanking of machinery. Hunters. It was the kind he had seen before, organized, relentless, designed to capture or destroy. The dragons had been right. Danger had come sooner than expected. Arden whispered instructions. Stay together. Be ready to hide. The dragons obeyed without hesitation. Rinal's small flame flickered from her nostrils, unnoticed by Arden, but it made him smile quietly. Courage came in many forms. Even in creatures so small, it could shine bright enough to face monsters larger than themselves. Arden's hands moved instinctively, checking the doors, preparing for the unknown. The outpost would be a fortress, if only for tonight. Minutes stretched. The hum grew louder. Arden's mind ran through old tactics, the ones he had used in wars long past. He realized that protecting these dragons required not only skill, but patience. They could not be sacrificed. Every move mattered. Arden adjusted the lights, creating shadows, rearranging objects to block sightlines. The children watched and learned, imitating his careful movements, trying to understand what it meant to survive. Finally, Arden turned to them. You are safe for now, he said. But we cannot stay quiet forever. When the doors open, we face it together. You trust me. I trust you. Each child nodded, and Arden saw the fire in their eyes, the fire that matched the glow of their scales. For the first time in years, he did not feel alone. The weight of the night had shifted. It was no longer about ghosts or memories. It was about life, about courage, and about protecting those who could not protect themselves. The night stretched on, long and tense, but filled with small warmth. The children rested near the heater, occasionally shifting closer to Arden. He told them stories, speaking of battles, planets, and comrades long gone. They listened, wide-eyed, asking questions he sometimes could not answer. Yet, in their questions, Arden found hope. He realized that even in the galaxy's darkest corners, life, trust, and courage could still shine bright. The mechanical hum continued outside, a reminder that danger was near. But Arden and the dragons waited together, hearts beating in quiet unison. The night was long, but Arden knew one truth. These children, small and glowing, carried more than fire in their bodies. They carried hope. And Arden Vale, veteran of many wars, would protect that hope. No one would take it from them. Not tonight, not ever. The hum outside grew louder, vibrating through the metal walls of the outpost. Arden Vale crouched near the reinforced door, the 4 small dragons huddled behind him. Each of them had grown calmer since the first moments, but their tails flicked nervously and their wings twitched at every sound. Arden could feel the tension in the air. He had faced enemies before, many stronger and faster than this, but something about protecting these young dragons felt different. Their trust was fragile, and he could not let it break. He whispered quietly, "They will come through if we let them. Stay close and do exactly as I say." The dragons nodded, their glowing eyes wide but determined. Arden scanned the room, arranging simple defenses with what little he had. Broken crates, old furniture, anything that could slow down attackers, he moved it with care. He watched the children as they mimicked his actions. Kesh lifted a crate, trying to block a corner, while Illyra crawled under the table to keep watch. Rinal and Sova stayed near Arden, their small bodies pressed close to his legs, breathing in rhythm with him. Outside, a shadow shifted. Arden's eyes narrowed. He had seen hunters like this before, precision machines, armed with nets and energy weapons, designed to capture living beings without a thought for mercy. He could hear the quiet whir of servos, the scrape of mechanical feet, and the occasional electronic ping of scanners. These hunters had not expected resistance. They had not expected Arden Vale. And they certainly had not expected dragons, small but alive, full of courage. Arden crouched lower, his mind racing. He had survived wars that spanned whole systems, but those wars were against beings who understood rules, strategies, and fear. These machines did not think like humans, but he could use their logic against them. Every shadow, every angle of the room, could be used as advantage. He whispered instructions to the dragons. "If you need to move, do it quietly. If you need to breathe fire, do it only when I say. We cannot waste it." The dragons nodded, their tiny heads tilting in understanding. The first hunter stepped through the door without warning. Arden reacted instantly. He had no time for hesitation. With a swift motion, he knocked a crate over, forcing the machine to stumble. Sparks flew as wires touched metal. The dragons gasped but stayed down. Arden's rifle was old, but he aimed carefully, disabling the machine's targeting system with precise shots. The other hunters paused, confused by the sudden resistance. Arden knew he had only seconds to act. He moved quickly, using the shadows to his advantage. Kesh, seeing Arden's movements, used a small burst of his fire, just enough to illuminate the room and startle the hunters. Illyra followed, her wings flapping to create distractions. Arden realized the children were learning, adapting, even in the heat of danger. They were not just survivors, they were students of courage, learning from a veteran who had faced death many times before. The room became a blur of sparks, light, and movement, but Arden stayed focused. Every action counted. Every second could mean life or death. After a tense few minutes, the hunters began to retreat. Arden could hear their electronic communication glitching. They had not expected humans to fight like this, to use instinct, patience, and strategy all at once. They had not expected dragons to move with intelligence, even in fear. Arden watched them leave, his rifle lowering slowly. He turned to the children. Their eyes were wide, glowing faintly from the small flames that had escaped in the struggle. None were hurt. Arden allowed himself a small smile. Courage, he realized, was something the galaxy often forgot humans possessed. As the night settled again, the dragons began to speak softly. "They will come back," Sova whispered. Arden nodded. "Yes, they will. But we are ready. You learned quickly." Rinnel stepped closer. "You were not afraid," she said. Arden shook his head. "I am always afraid. I just do what needs to be done." The children were quiet for a moment, absorbing the words. In their young minds, they were seeing something the galaxy often overlooked. Humans could fight, survive, and protect, not just through strength, but through determination, strategy, and heart. Arden sat down, letting the children settle near him. "Your mother trusted me for a reason," he said quietly. "Long ago, when dragons and humans clashed, I made a choice. I did not take the easy path. I chose to protect rather than destroy. You are here because someone believed in mercy, even when it was hard." The dragons looked at him, understanding more than words could express. Their small faces reflected admiration and trust. Arden realized that this trust, this bond, was stronger than any weapon he had ever held. The hum outside returned, softer this time. Arden knew the hunters would come again. He also knew that he was not alone. For the first time in years, he felt a sense of purpose. Protecting these dragons was not about orders or missions, it was about courage, responsibility, and something deeper. The galaxy may have forgotten what humans were capable of, but Arden had not. And now, he had proof in 4 small dragons who trusted him completely. Hours passed quietly. The children huddled together, listening to Arden speak of distant planets, battles, and comrades long gone. They asked questions, and Arden answered as best he could. They did not understand everything, but they learned something vital: humans could endure, adapt, and protect. They could face fear and still act with heart. Arden could see it reflected in their small eyes, in their glowing scales, in the way they moved together. When the first light of dawn touched the outpost, Arden looked at the dragons. They were exhausted but alert. The outside world was still dangerous, full of machines and hunters who did not understand mercy or courage. But inside the walls of the outpost, a quiet truth had formed: humans, even when old and tired, could still make a difference. Even when alone, they could protect life that others might not care about. And sometimes, that courage was enough to change the course of history, even in the darkest corners of the galaxy. Arden smiled faintly. He did not know what would happen next. He did not know if the hunters would return in greater numbers, or if the Dragon Queen herself would arrive soon. But he did know one thing clearly. The galaxy had underestimated humans. It had forgotten their persistence, their cleverness, and their heart. And tonight, Arden Vale, a veteran of wars long past, would remind the universe what humans were capable of. He would protect these children. He would stand between them and any threat. He would not fail. And the dragons, small and brave, would learn from him. They would learn that fire and wings were not the only tools needed to survive. Courage, trust, and heart were stronger than any weapon. Arden knew this. And the galaxy, in its vastness, had no choice but to witness it, even if it took a night as long and dark as this one. The early light of the twin suns touched the outpost walls, casting long shadows across the cold metal floor. Ardent Vale sat quietly, the 4 small dragons resting near him. The hum of the distant machines had faded, but the tension in the air remained. Arden knew it was not over. The galaxy rarely forgot creatures like the dragons, and their enemies would return. He looked at the children, Rinal, Sova, Kesh, and Illyra, and felt a mixture of pride and worry. They had survived the night, but their mother was still out there, and Arden had no idea what condition she might be in. Suddenly, a sound unlike the mechanical hum or wind came from outside. It was soft, musical, but filled with power. Arden stiffened. He had heard stories of dragons before, but this was different. It was a call that resonated in the very walls of the outpost. The children perked up immediately. Rinal's small body trembled with excitement, Sova's tail flicked nervously, Kesh's wings twitched, and Illyra's eyes widened in recognition. Arden did not understand it, but he sensed the change in the room. Something important was approaching. The doors shuddered as a large, shadowed figure stepped inside. Arden raised his rifle instinctively, but then froze. The figure lowered its head, revealing a long face, golden eyes, and scales that glimmered in silver and violet. This was no ordinary dragon. The presence was immense, yet calm. Arden realized immediately that this was the Dragon Queen. Velthra of the Ember Vale had come for her children. Her gaze fell on Arden, and he felt the weight of it like a physical force. "I am here," she said, her voice strong but tired. "I thank you for keeping them safe." Arden lowered his rifle slowly, unsure if he should speak. The children moved forward, their small claws brushing against their mother's scales. She nudged them gently, whispering words they could not repeat. Arden could see her condition, wounds along her sides, patches of scales dull and damaged. She had fought to survive, and yet, her first concern was the safety of her children. Arden's respect grew. He understood what it meant to protect life at all costs. Velthra's gaze returned to Arden. "Long ago," she said, "you made a choice that none of your kind would understand. You chose mercy when you could have destroyed. You chose protection over victory. That choice saved my line, saved my children. You are why they are alive today." Arden shook his head. He did not remember the event she spoke of, yet he felt its weight. He had acted, perhaps without thinking, but her words gave meaning to something he had long forgotten. Courage, compassion, and strength were not always in the same place. He realized the galaxy had been wrong to forget humans. The children chirped softly, and Velthra looked at them. "These are the lessons you carry, my children. Bravery is not always about power. It is about trust. It is about protecting those who cannot protect themselves." Arden smiled faintly. He had taught them nothing. They had learned from watching, from surviving, from trusting someone who had stood alone in a dark outpost. And now, they were ready. He could see it in their eyes, the same fire that had burned in humans, and the same fire that had burned in dragons for centuries. Arden asked quietly, "What now? What do you want me to do?" Velthra regarded him carefully. "I offer you a choice," she said. "You may return to your life, and the galaxy will likely continue to forget you. Or you may join us, even for a time. Not as a servant, not as a soldier, but as a guardian and family. You have proven what humans can be. You may help shape what comes next." Arden thought for a moment. The offer was unimaginable. He had lived a life of battles, loss, and solitude. But this was different. This was purpose without orders. Protection without war. He nodded slowly. The Dragon Queen stepped closer, her immense body filling the room, yet careful not to frighten her children. "I chose a human once," she said softly. "You may be the only one left who understands what that means. Humans endure. Humans adapt. Humans fight not only for themselves but for others. And tonight, you have shown that this is true." Arden felt the weight of her words sink in. He had never sought glory or reward. He had only acted when necessary. Yet somehow, in this small outpost, on the edge of the galaxy, his actions mattered more than he had ever imagined. The children moved closer to Arden, their small bodies pressing against his legs and arms. Rinal's warm breath tickled his hand. Sova looked up at him with wide, trusting eyes. Kesh's wings flickered slightly as if testing his reaction. Illyra's silver scales shimmered in the soft light. Arden realized that he had become more than a guardian tonight. He had become a teacher, a protector, and a symbol of what humans could do. The Dragon Queen had chosen him, but he realized that this was not about choice alone. It was about connection. Humans and dragons, linked through trust and courage, stronger together than apart. Velthra nodded, acknowledging the moment. The galaxy watches from afar, she said. It will see this night, even if it does not understand. And it may learn, slowly, that humans are not to be underestimated. Arden felt a quiet pride. Not in himself, but in what humans could be, and in what humans could teach even dragons. He had spent years believing he was alone, forgotten. But in this room, with 4 small dragons and their mother, he realized he had been wrong. The galaxy may have overlooked him, but he had made a difference. As the day began to rise fully, Arden looked out the windows at the distant stars. They were still the same, vast and cold, yet somehow brighter now. He did not know what awaited them beyond the outpost, but he felt ready. Velthra had brought hope, and the children carried it forward. Arden Vale, veteran of countless battles, knew he had a new mission, not one given by orders or government, but one chosen by trust and need. He would stand with these dragons. He would protect them, guide them, and fight if necessary. And perhaps, the galaxy would finally remember what humans could do. Velthra bent her head, touching her snout gently to Arden's shoulder. "Thank you," she said simply. "You understand what the galaxy has forgotten. That is enough for now." Arden nodded silently, feeling a warmth he had not known in years. The children chirped happily, moving closer to their mother. Arden looked at them, their small glowing forms reflecting the soft light of the rising suns. He felt a bond form, a bond stronger than any he had ever known. It was not forged in war, but in trust, courage, and care. And for the first time in a long time, Arden Vale felt he truly belonged. The galaxy may still be vast and full of dangers. Machines, hunters, and other threats waited beyond the horizon. But in this moment, in this outpost on the edge of known space, a veteran and 4 dragon children knew something the rest of the galaxy had forgotten. Courage, trust, and heart could protect life, even in the darkest times. Arden Vale had not only survived the night, he had taught it. And as Velthra gathered her children, Arden realized that the galaxy might just be ready to learn, too. The suns had risen fully, bathing the outpost in warm light. Arden Vale stood near the entrance, watching as the Dragon Queen, Velthra, gathered her children close. The 4 small dragons, Rinal, Sova, Kesh, and Illyra, chirped happily, their scales shimmering in the sunlight. Arden had spent the night fighting, guiding, and protecting them, but now the danger had passed. For a moment, the galaxy seemed still, as if it had paused to notice what had happened in this quiet outpost. Arden felt a strange sense of peace. Velthra looked at Arden, her golden eyes soft but strong. "You have done more than protect my children," she said. "You have shown the galaxy what humans are capable of. Courage, patience, and care, these are weapons stronger than any fleet or machine. You have reminded the stars of what they often forget." Arden nodded slowly. He did not think of himself as remarkable. He had only done what he knew was right. But now he realized that even small actions could ripple across the vastness of space. The children tugged gently at his hands, refusing to leave his side. Arden knelt, smiling at them. "You are safe now," he said. "Your mother will take care of you. You have each other, and that is stronger than anything out there." Rinal hopped onto his shoulder, resting her small head against his neck. Sova, still cautious, stayed close to his leg. Kesh and Illyra flapped their wings softly, testing the air as if learning freedom for the first time. Arden felt a bond stronger than any he had known in all his years of service. Velthra stepped forward, addressing the small dragons. "Remember what you learned last night," she said gently. "Trust, courage, and unity are what will keep you alive. And never forget the human who stood alone to protect you. He showed you strength that the galaxy often overlooks." Arden felt a quiet pride as he listened. The children looked at him with admiration, understanding something that the galaxy had long forgotten. Humans could endure, they could protect, and they could inspire. Outside, the horizon was calm, but Arden knew it would not stay that way forever. The galaxy had watchers and hunters, observers and enemies. Yet the story of this night would spread quietly, carried by whispers, signals, and memory. Humans had survived against machines designed to kill. Humans had protected dragons thought to be extinct. And humans had taught even dragons a lesson about courage and heart. Arden realized that this was the start of something new, something the stars themselves would learn. The Dragon Queen looked at Arden with a soft smile. "You do not need to follow us, if you do not wish. But know that your actions have changed more than just this outpost. You have reminded the galaxy of a truth it often forgets. Humans are not weak. Humans endure. Humans fight not only for themselves, but for others." Arden nodded, letting the words sink in. He did not need titles, praise, or glory. The children, their mother, and the quiet knowledge that he had done the right thing were enough. Rinal chirped and flapped her tiny wings. "Will you come with us?" she asked softly. Arden shook his head, smiling. "I have my own place here, my own work to do. But I will always be watching over you, from afar if I must. You are ready now?" Sova looked uncertain, but he nodded. Kesha's green eyes reflected respect, and Elira's silver scales glimmered in the sunlight. The children understood that protection and courage were not always about being together, they were about being ready, wherever the stars took them. Velthra lowered her head to Arden's level. "The galaxy will remember this night," she said. "It may take time, but humans and dragons are stronger together than apart. You have proven it. You have shown what the stars often forget." Arden smiled faintly, a mixture of pride and humility washing over him. He did not seek recognition, but he felt the quiet satisfaction of a mission completed, the lives of these children saved, courage shared, and trust honored. The small dragons climbed onto their mother's back, one by one, and the Dragon Queen unfurled her wings. They lifted into the sky with ease, their scales catching the sunlight and sparkling like fire. Arden watched as they ascended, his heart swelling with an emotion he had not felt in years. He had spent a lifetime fighting for survival, but now he had done something greater, he had given life and hope a chance to continue. The children's laughter echoed faintly as they flew higher, leaving the outpost and its loneliness behind. Alone again, Arden stood in the warm light, watching the sky. The galaxy seemed wider, brighter, and less lonely. The stars would witness what had happened, even if they did not understand it yet. Humans were not just survivors, they were protectors, teachers, and symbols of courage. Arden felt the quiet truth settle in him, he had not been forgotten, and neither had the children or the dragons. The galaxy would learn, slowly, that humans were more than it often gave them credit for. The outpost felt different now, no longer empty or cold. Arden's hands rested on the table, steady and calm. The children and their mother had gone, but their presence lingered, like a warm flame in the darkness. Arden smiled faintly, realizing that the galaxy had seen something remarkable that night, a human who had stood alone, who had protected the weak, and who had shown courage that even dragons admired. The stars would carry the story, silently but surely, across the reaches of space. As he prepared the outpost for the next day, Arden Vale felt a renewed sense of purpose. He was no longer just a veteran of wars. He was a guardian, a witness, and a part of a story that the galaxy would remember. The 4 dragon children had taught him something he had long forgotten, that hope, courage, and trust could survive even in the darkest corners of space. And in protecting them, Arden had reminded the universe what humans could do. The suns climbed higher, casting long shadows over the outpost. Arden watched the horizon one last time, seeing the Dragon Queen and her children disappear among the clouds. He knew they would be safe for now, but he also knew the galaxy was full of challenges. And yet, he felt ready. Humans endured. Humans adapted. Humans protected. And sometimes, humans taught the stars a lesson they had long forgotten. Alone in the quiet outpost, Arden Vale smiled. The night had passed. The children were safe. And the galaxy, in some small way, had learned what courage, trust, and heart could do. Humans were not weak. Humans were not forgotten. Humans could change the course of life itself, even when the stars were watching. Arden Vale had done his part, and the stars had taken notice.